a beautiful moment, an equestrian doing
What
her
a lovely
craft.
thing when you're riding a
Gorgeous.
horse, a beautiful woman. That is Loni Atwood, and she's a Parksville mom.
Mother of
And
two.
she's got a couple of teenage boys, and they're gorgeous. And she has been going through hell with essentially an issue with the healthcare system and the government because Loni has been diagnosed with cancer, and it's a rare form of a adrenal cancer that is 4th stage, and just all the kind of holes in the system that led to complications that shouldn't exist.
Right, having no doctor, delay in getting treatment. What is happening here is something that needs to have the light shone on it. And Loni is making a plea for what's happening and what has happened to her to not happen to anybody else. And that's why we wanted to bring her on.
Loni is joining us now from Parksville. Loni, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
So can you tell us a little bit about the struggle that you've had with the healthcare system and just sort of, balls being dropped that disadvantaged you and your health?
Okay, well, I think the biggest thing, the biggest disadvantage is not having any experience and not having any idea of how to navigate the system. I think that is the biggest problem. And if I did have a GP, perhaps I would have had some guidance. But when you're not having a referral to BC Cancer Centre, you have nothing but yourself to kind of process, and you don't know what the next steps are. And like I said in another interview, you want to be, somewhat polite and trust and have faith in the system, but the system is letting you down ultimately. So your politeness is going to get you nowhere.
We've had an opportunity to read about your story or have listened to you tell it prior to. One of the reasons we wanted to have you here is because you articulate it so impeccably, if I may. Would you mind sharing with our viewer what happened?
What happened from the diagnosis?
Yes.
Okay. So I still had a training ride to do that night, and my face had swollen up. So the tumor was dumping 7 times the normal human amount of cortisol and adrenaline into my body, which was making me quite ill. I didn't know because with those levels of cortisol, I was not in any pain. I was able to go to work every day. I was able to function. I was a little bit what I would describe as ramped up, maybe higher heart rate. I didn't know my blood pressure was through the roof. I didn't know that I was profoundly anemic. I didn't know that my potassium had crashed. These are all markers that indicate cancer.
Right.
So perhaps with blood work, routine blood work, I may have been able to catch it sooner. But without a GP to, order that, you can't just walk in and have blood work, and there's no reason to really admit yourself into the ER until you're having symptoms is the problem. So it was through ER in Nanaimo that they found the tumor by ultrasound.
And in fact, they said, well, let's just monitor this. And it turned out that wasn't a great idea because by the time you kind of got more of a deep dive into your situation, it was pretty well progressed. And then they're saying, Mom, no chemo for you. How did you feel in that moment?
Well, if we could go back for just a brief moment, when I was admitted into Nanaimo, they knew that I was very, very sick. They said I was a ticking time bomb. They weren't sure how I was even alive at this point. I was put on immediate bed rest, and it was basically a referral to Vancouver General. That was the hospital that was willing to take this on. Nanaimo wasn't able to perform this surgery, neither was Victoria. So it was an oncologist, surgical oncologist in Vancouver that was able to take this on. And then, fast forward to after the surgery, I recovered quite well. And that's where the problem started because the plan going into surgery was not the plan that happened coming out of surgery.
So what changed there?
To be honest, I'm really not sure. I think that BC Cancer had received my file. They had received the pathology from the tumor. But it still took, till March 20th before I even saw an oncologist.
Wow.
So they knew it was an aggressive tumor based on the fact that it had grown 2 centimeters from the time of being admitted into ER to the time it was removed at surgery. So several weeks I was on the expedited list. And so they can't deny that it wasn't aggressive, because 2 centimeters, that's quite significant in 7 weeks or 6 weeks.
No question.
I think a lot of cancer patients, some who have had similar experiences to yours, have felt kind of abandoned by the system, by the government. Share with us how you felt through this.
Yeah, that first appointment when they were talking about end of life and how I need to prepare and that this is taking my life and that I needed to, perhaps read their care packet, that they were going to send to me in the mail, and I should, you know, just basically prepare and think about quality of life and how I want to live out my next, this next time. I did feel abandoned. I thought, okay, well, why not me? Look at me. I don't think that I resemble somebody who's ill and ready to hang up my boots. I think that why wouldn't I be a candidate for chemo? It wasn't being offered to me at that point, and I didn't know why. And, had I had a little bit more time in my appointment, I maybe would have pushed a little bit more. But they weren't, the way it was relayed to me was that they weren't sure that it would be successful in any treatment. Now we know otherwise. So that with the hyperthermia, my tumor is actually shrinking. So,
wow. So,
yeah.
and if had you had a GP who knew you, had a file on you, had seen how you'd been remarkably healthy and active and, so capable and able and advocated on your behalf, like having the GP seems like a first broken piece, and then just becoming a number. What did you do at that point where you felt like perhaps, you had to take things into your own hands?
Well, the shock wore off, and I had to tell the boys.
Right.
So I had to tell my family, and I had to tell the boys, and basically we were preparing. We were preparing for what might be coming down the path, and I don't know what that looks like. And that was a hard conversation to have. But after about a week, I kind of pulled up my pants and I said, no, absolutely not. And I found out a doctor, a naturopathic oncologist, integrated health in White Rock, that they offer hypothermia treatments and infusions and mistletoe, which is alternative therapy. Of course, none of it is recognized by BC Cancer Centre, but I do think that it is part and parcel to why I'm doing so well. I mean, I feel like I'm doing well. In my brain, I'm doing well. And my body, I'm still able to go to work every day. I'm still able to ride. I get gassed a little bit sooner than what I normally would have. I'm not able to ride 5-6 horses a day. I'm lucky if I can get 2 in, but
but you're riding.
I'm riding, and I'm able to, still do the laundry, and I'm able to still have energy and still go on little hikes. And I actually ran with my sister 3 weeks ago. So all these little wins.
Good for you. And I mean, the whole idea is that you shouldn't have to fight to get medical officials and government officials to see you as a human being who is valued, who loves her children, who wants to live. I mean, that is a no-brainer. You shouldn't have to fight for that.
Well, the other upsetting part was now my oncologist, my medical oncologist at BC Cancer Centre, so he knows of a clinical trial that I may be eligible for, but I've been denied 3 times. So I can't see an oncologist for BC Cancer Centre rallying 3 times and applying for me to get onto this clinical trial if he didn't believe that it could have an effect. But it's very expensive. It's only in phase 2 in the States, and it's the government that is shooting it down because the numbers aren't there.
So Loni, if there was one thing that you would ask that be different, or a handful of things that you would ask would be different, what is your message to the government and the people in the health authority to look at and perhaps change?
Well, in my specific case, with this rare cancer and knowing that the prognosis is not good, and the timelines are not usually good with patients with adrenocortical carcinoma, especially when it's metastasized. But with my success and my fitness and my health, why not me?
Why not?
Why not let's go ahead with this clinical trial and just see, rather than just throwing in the towel? I also think that there is a problem in the process and the care plan from the time you leave surgery and moving forward to when you get that first referral with BC Cancer Centre. I think that has to be a little bit faster than what was done in my case. There's lots of holes in the process, and I think somebody needs to really sit down and have a good look of how to triage this and get people care so that they have a fighting chance.
Do you think sometimes that maybe bureaucrats see you as a case number, a patient case number versus a human being?
Absolutely.
That's got to change.
Absolutely.
So what would you say to Premier Eby? And we will flag this for him. What would you like to say to him?
I hope that you see me as an individual now, as a single mother, as a woman who has plenty of life ahead of me that I want to live, that my boys want me to be a part of. If this was one of your family members, would they be treated this way, or would things be different? I hope you really consider that.
Loni, we are pulling for you. And I just wish you all the best luck. And I hope you get great news in your health kind of journey. And we want to stay in touch with you and see how things are going.
We'd like that.
I love the fact that you're speaking up, because your story, sharing it, really helps a lot of other people in this province who are dealing with similar things.
You will make change.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this.
Okay. Bye, ladies.
We're sending you all the love and lots of strength from here. Thanks, Loni.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
She's so lovely.
I cannot, as a mother, it's just striking me. Like,
Right? You're looking at boys, teenage boys, and thinking they're but the grace of God. Right?
okay.
They're but the grace of God. Yeah. Can you,
Take
you
us
can't
out.
even
No,
talk.
I
Okay,
can't.
we're going to be talking about depression. If someone you know struggles with anxiety, you're not alone. And the amazing Kelly Rudy is going to join us to share his journey. So stay tuned for that. Also, journalism powered by artificial intelligence. It's already here and we are not okay with
This is
it.
scaring me.
We'll tell you why when we come back.
Look at that. That is AI. We'll tell you more about that. Okay, I've got myself together for our viewing party. We start with Karen in Saanich.
We also have Carrie and Duncan. Hello, Carrie.
There's Carrie. And Laura and Cooper, P-U-R-R.
Of course. And also Leah and Portia with Rabbit.
Oh, Rabby Dabby Doo. Somebody here is going to win our viewing party prize of the day, $150 gift card at either Steamship or Roamers.